Today I'm making Indian food. I love Indian food. So here's the short story. There's this wonderful local Indian restaurant. We started going there literally once or twice a week. The owners of the restaurant and the menu, by the way, reassured us that the items that we were selecting were dairy free. We come to discover about a month later that at least one of the items that my husband and I were ordering quite frequently did contain dairy. It was their Chana masala. My husband has charged me with making a Chana masala that is just as good as, if not better than, the one that we used to eat at this restaurant. And it has to be dairy free. Another layer of pressure. We've invited our closest friends here in SoCal, Sid, Nabia, Arman, Z, and Fez to dinner. Sid is Indian, Nabia is Pakistani, and they're experts at this cuisine, and I am not. I've literally only made Indian food like 4 times. In any event, they're coming over for dinner today, and I really want to make sure that I impress them. I'm also going to be making some Bengali fried rice, and finally, we're going to try and make naan. So, very excited. Sam.
We should just wrap it.
Just do it.
After the farmer's market, we headed to the local Indian grocery store to pick up all the spices and herbs. I knew next to nothing about half the ingredients on the list, but the owner of the store was aggressively helpful. This one, Kashmiri.
One second, let me.
But the funniest moment was when he couldn't find one of the ingredients and he pulled out his phone and called his wife. He applauded me for all the effort I was putting into my dish and then warned me not to ruin it all by adding too much salt or too much spice like his wife once did. I have to say, this was probably one of the most enjoyable experiences of grocery shopping I have had in a long time. Every single recipe I consulted recommended that you start with dry chickpeas that were soaked for several hours. While the chickpeas are soaking, I figured it was best to get started on the dough for my naan because you have to let it proof for several hours as well. For the naan, I'm using a recipe by my friend Nisha. I've known Nisha for 7 years now, and though we don't get to see each other very often, we're still really good friends. When we first met, Nisha was already a very successful food blogger, and I had only just started writing vegan recipes. I didn't think she would notice someone like me who had only 10,000 followers to her several 100,000. But it turned out that she and I were both lawyers, and we both loved food. The other day, I was watching this Korean drama, and one of the main characters said the most profound thing. To judge a person's true character, you should fling open the doors to your heart. A person with depth will see your sincerity and reciprocate with their own vulnerability, while those who have no character will seek to exploit it. When Nisha and I became friends, I knew instantly, in that way you do, that she was a person of character. Every relationship takes some work, whether it's keeping cordial with the mail lady, staying friends with someone you only see once a year, or keeping your marriage intact. Sometimes, though, the hardest part is figuring out who's worth the work. Like I said, I've made Indian food before, just not very often. I keep a box of all the spices and ingredients I've collected. I learned from Nisha that the key to not burning everything is to measure everything out in advance. Asafoetida is a gum resin that's used in a lot of Indian cuisine. It's also a proven remedy for several tummy ailments. I thought it was a little strange at first that the recipe called for a store-bought Chana masala blend in addition to my own spice blend, but I figured it's really no different than me adding ramen packet to pretty much every chickpea I make. You're supposed to use an Instant Pot or pressure cooker to cook the soaked chickpeas, but I don't have either of those. So I call an audible and decide to use my rice cooker. One of the other things I thought was so interesting was the use of tea. As you saw, I threw a tea bag in there among the cinnamon stick and the bay leaves and the cloves and the salt to add flavor to the chickpeas while they stew. Which tea, you ask? Well, luckily I happen to have a chai masala tea bag in the box of teas my mom gave me before she left last summer. The recipe I'm using for chana masala calls for boiling the onions before pureeing them to help soften the flavor. My friend Sid doesn't like to see onions in his food, so this turned out pretty perfect. None of the recipes I consulted specified the kinds of tomatoes you're supposed to use for the chana masala, so I went with the approach I use when I make my red sauce, which is a heavy reliance on heirlooms and some Romas. Not every recipe I looked at called for tomato paste, but a couple of them did. And I know my husband, he loves tomato flavor. I'm a potato gal, so even though most of the recipes didn't call for potatoes, I decided to chop some up and throw them in midway to give them enough time to cook. The other adjustment I made was to add a little vegan heavy whipping cream, kind of like you'd see with vodka pasta, because the version we had at the restaurant, well, they added a lot, which made me start wondering whether what we were eating there was not only not vegan, but maybe not chanamasala? For the Bengali fried rice, I decided to boil the basmati rice like all of the recipes called for. I've never boiled rice before, and I was a little nervous about how it would turn out, but it actually turned out really good, and it's so much easier than steaming. Confession time. This is not cilantro, it's flat leaf parsley. I don't like cilantro, and therefore I often substitute with flat leaf parsley. Sorry. One of the things I learned while doing some research on Bengali fried rice is to make sure that your temperature is really high. So keep that fire on high to ensure that the vegetables remain nice and crispy and retain their beautiful color. I was doing a workout video the other day, and the fitness instructor said, "Don't stay too long in your comfort zone. Nothing grows in there." I don't know. Maybe muscles won't, but warmth, security, safety, those things can grow inside a comfort zone. But I get her point. I've had the most growth in my life when I stepped out of my comfort zone. But that's the tricky thing, right? Sometimes it's really hard to recognize comfort zones for what they are. They disguise themselves in toxic relationships that make you think you're not alone. Steady paycheck jobs that deep down are sucking you dry. The same rotation of recipes day in and day out because you're afraid to try and then fail at something new. I love Indian food, but I hate failure. Thank goodness, though, that there are still things in life that make us believe it's worth trying. The final piece to this Indian feast, hopefully, is the tadka, a tempered oil or ghee infused with spices and aromatics. I didn't have vegan ghee, so I just used a couple pats of vegan butter along with some garlic, chili powder, and garam masala. You then pour the tempered oil over your chana masala or whatever dish you've made. Well, that Bengali fried rice turned out pretty as a picture. And that chana masala, while it looks a lot like all the different recipes and YouTube videos that I've scoured on the internet, doesn't look anything like the chana masala that we were eating at the restaurant. The dish we had at the restaurant was much paler in color. It was like a pale, pale pink, but I don't care. That looks delicious. I also learned pretty quickly that you need to turn your naan into a shovel if you want to be effective.
I have to say I made multiple errors in just about everything I made today. In the naan, in the rice, and of course the chana masala. Biggest error was trying to cook the chickpeas in the rice cooker. The chickpeas turned out perfect. They're cooked perfectly, they're tender, and they're unbelievably flavorful. Like, I did not know chickpeas could taste this good. The problem was all of the liquid was steamed out of the rice cooker, and I was not able to utilize that for the broth, which is what you're supposed to do in a traditional chana masala recipe. This still turned out to be probably the best Indian dish I've ever made in my entire life, so I'm actually really proud. Cross my fingers that my husband will like it, and more importantly, that my friends will enjoy this.
All right. Chana masala. Trying to get a little bit of everything. Oh, that is delicious. Another bite. I gotta say, it's not really how I remember it, but it's been a while, but it is delicious. I could see eating this for the next couple of days.
There's a reason it didn't taste the way Anthony remembered. It turns out the dish that the restaurant called chana masala wasn't actually chana masala, according to our friends. It was some made-up dish with chickpeas and a creamy Indian-style gravy that they called chana masala. My friends assured me that what I made was a traditional chana masala, and that it was delicious.
Polished down.
Second, third.
That is my at least second.
This is his third.
Is it really?
He's on round 3. Look at the naan plate, empty. They polished it.
I have 2 for